All right, we are live in Convos with Chris and Avi. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time. We're just going to jump right into it and do a cold open. So maybe we're going to start with 10 seconds. Introduce yourself, give the name, your name to the folks, and tell them where you work, and then let's jump right into it.
Sounds good. Hey, Chris. Thanks for making way for the introduction. I'm Avi Sooriyarachchi. I lead the applied AI team in the US for Mistral. That's kind of what I do. So I kind of help customers build stuff with machine learning or AI specifically.
Okay.
That's the new word for machine learning, I guess. But
yeah. So it's a hot topic these days. So let's just pretend it's a tweet, right? So you lead the applied AI engineering team, right? How would you sum that up in a tweet, what you do? For those that are aspiring to get into AI, they're trying to find their way. Maybe you're a software developer. Maybe you're just getting into machine learning. How would you describe what you do in a tweet?
I would say we build for and build with customers on top of the technology that Mistral, the foundational technology that Mistral provides, which is like foundation models. Mm-hmm. So that's like then the response to that tweet would be like the tweet is only so long, right? So like the thread emoji and like the sub tweet would be this could be anything from building systems around models, sometimes changing the behavior of the models by kind of doing things like fine tuning or alignment using things like direct preference optimization. Or it could be as complicated as quantizing the model in a very particular way, or training a model from scratch as well. So our team and our peers in Paris do a lot of pre-training work for customers as well.
Wow. Yeah, I've been seeing the headlines. You guys have partnerships all over the place, from Microsoft to G42. It's truly, truly amazing. But I want to take a step back here, right? When I think about my career in tech, as I've started out as an SC, then I worked in IT and manufacturing, right? And I've kind of bounced around the whole technical sales space. The one party that doesn't understand what I really do has been like my family, my parents, right? When I try to explain to them what I do, they think I just kind of fix computers, even though I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. How would you describe your job to your family? Do they know what you do? Do they know like that Mistral is the mission that you're on, or do they just think that you're just in IT?
Yeah, my parents are medical professionals, so I don't know if they really, I mean, my dad's an orthopedic surgeon, so he understands like complicated surgery stuff, but not necessarily machine learning. Yeah. I would say something along the lines of like, we're kind of like engineers in a customer facing capacity. So what we ship is typically for customers. But at Mistral, the lines blur a little bit because we're such a small company. Like when I started interviewing, it was like 50 something people. When I joined, it was 70 people. Now it's like 250. So like again, it's nothing compared to like a very a typical large tech company, but it's still like a substantial growth. But all this is to say that we end up contributing to some of our internal code bases as well. But I would say we help big and small companies build stuff with AI, and saying what AI is, answering that question is a bigger problem than describing what I do. Or if I feel lazy, I would say just I work in IT.
No, that makes sense because it's all over LinkedIn, right? It's all over my feed. It's all over my page, and there's carousels and there's folks with AI writing their posts like, this is what you should be doing. These are the models you should be studying. Yeah. These are the tools that you should be using, right? And so maybe how would you help, being in your position, because you've been at this for a while, right? And I tell folks that machine learning is not new. It's been around for forever. Data science is not a new concept, right? How would you help dispel some of the hype that we're seeing on LinkedIn and social media versus the actual reality of like how you go about your research, how you go about your day-to-day, or the impact that your company is making?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously like a lot of hype because I think, especially after ChatGPT, like I think it was like November 22, right? People were like really got into it, and I would say that it's still rooted in like the same stuff that people worked on like many years prior to that. Like I think deep learning started getting hot maybe like in the early 2010s, and it was primarily concentrated on like vision and maybe a little bit on like, to an extent, on like different kinds of language. I don't know if should even call them language models, like different ways of modeling language, like recurrent neural networks and things like this. But yeah, like when ChatGPT happened, I think like people thought this was magic. But at the end of the day, like these are still like really impressive algorithms that function on this, like that are based on the same principles, but at a much larger scale when it comes to the amount of data and compute and like effort involved in training and of course inference as well. But it's kind of based on the same stuff. I think the difference here is that you kind of have a bit more generalizability because like when BERT came out, I think it was late 2018 or 2019. Um, it was like one of those models where you can fine tune it to do whatever. Like, and that was kind of like the ImageNet moment for language, where or maybe I'm mischaracterizing it, but it kind of offered some generality as a result of like the power, if you will, of the transform architecture. But still, like regular people couldn't enjoy it the way or like use it the way that a machine learning engineer or data scientist would for a production workload, because they don't necessarily care about like what's like sentiment analysis or anything like that, because in the real world it wasn't that usable. Now the advantage of like these like large language models as they are used today is that you kind of have like I wouldn't call it AGI, but artificial generalizable use cases where you can ask the same model, you can prompt it the right way and get the model to like summarize, do sentiment analysis. Now you have like this reasoning behavior, function calling, things like this, which you simply couldn't do as effectively before. I think some of this behavior started like with GPT 3.0. Then you had like open source variants like Galactica that got panned quite a bit when they came out, because people weren't really like open to the idea of like a model making stuff up. But then when ChatGPT happened, it's kind of like when something is so cool, like it's like when you think about your favorite sports star or some sort of celebrity, and they might have all kinds of flaws there into like whatever that they're into, but they're so good at stuff that you kind of forgive it. So that's kind of what happened with ChatGPT. Like there were all these shortcomings, and that wave of models got a lot of love. But now people are kind of coming back to like, okay, like to use this stuff in the enterprise, like you have to put certain kinds of like guardrails in place, whether that's programmatic or at the level of the model weights themselves. So I would say it's the same stuff. It's just at a different scale, and of course a whole lot more utility.
You said something interesting there, right? And so I know that my wife's company, right, they're using these tools, they're putting their guardrails in place, right? And when I think of the landscape of what's out there, right, you've got anything from Google LLM to Notion to all these different tools. And so when you talk about guardrails, right, as a cyber guy, a guy with a cybersecurity background, right, I'm always talking about the threat landscape, right? And to me, it seems like we've entered the age of just so much can go wrong, right? There's so many positive things that you can do with these tools, you can do with AI, right? But people are literally putting all sorts of information into these models. And, it feels as if we're in kind of a weird space, right? Maybe double click on the guardrails, right? What does that look like at an enterprise level?
Yeah, I think like guardrails is like an old other term. I was out of words to use, so I just used guardrails. I think it's what I meant. Because like I think there's even a series of models from Meta called Llama Guard, I think, for like some sort of moderation. But I think the main idea, like in my mind, is like kind of constraining the domain as much as possible. Like for example, like people are so enamored by the idea of like if you give some context and ask a question and the model can infer a lot of domain knowledge like a person might have, which is not necessarily not true at all in a lot of cases. Like for example, like you've been in tech sales, like tech in general, for a long time, right? And like there's a lot of stuff about like, I mean, you worked at Google for a number of years and several other companies as well, I guess. But like there's stuff in like the open web, but there's some stuff in your head that's like tribal knowledge that you captured, right? 100%. So imagine that you gave like the best model out there right now. I mean, we have like Mistral Medium 3, but let's just say like top of the leaderboards, like Claude Opus 4.0, right? Like that's the biggest, baddest model out there, right? I mean, at least like according to the the benchmarks, which is another thing that we can get into, but which I don't really have a whole lot of faith in sometimes. But imagine like, but it's a very good model. Sonnet and Opus are they have been always good models. They do
Yeah.
good work. But imagine like you give all this context that's available publicly or internally at Google, like you form a company and ask certain questions and assume that the model with function calling and all this stuff can get the magically come up with the answer. That's not really going to happen because there's a lot of implicit knowledge that's like it's kind of like Polanyi's paradox, right? Like there's a lot of things that you know that you don't know you know.
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff like this that I see in the enterprise world. Like people want to toss a lot of data at the model and poorly structure a system to like answer questions, and it doesn't really work out well at all. So I think like guardrails in one sense is constraining the domain so that you can build a system that solves a single problem really, really well. Then it becomes like a software engineering problem, right? Because then to a degree. But then I guess like guardrails in a lot of other ways could be kind of moderation as well. Like for example, you probably need moderation at both levels, like user input as well as output from the model. I think alignment to a great degree takes care of this kind of model output moderation concerns, because it's not going to say anything that's like racist or sexist or anything like this if it has been like properly aligned. But people can ask all sorts of things, right? Like, so I think like if you're building an enterprise application that's particularly exposed to the outside world, then you need to put in like certain kinds of level of moderation. Like there are models for moderation as well. Like for example, we have a moderation API at Mistral that we ship to customers. We make it available via API as well. And I think there are like many other companies doing similar things. But I think like guardrails mean certain things at a functional level and at a security level.
Okay. That makes sense. So you mentioned many other companies doing many of these things, right? And so every day my feed is inundated with just these different models that are coming out of these different companies, right? And so you talked about something that's a personal pet peeve of mine, right? And that is, I'm a big fan of Gartner. I think not throwing shade at what they do, right? But these ratings, right? And figuring out which is the best and who's at the forefront, right? You express some skepticism there, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's just, for example, we have situations where our own models perform. Like there's a situation. I don't need to like kind of throw shade at other model vendors or various respected companies and so forth. I could just like give a good example from my previous company, and I used to work at Databricks. So like now I'm here at Mistral. So like there were a lot of cases where we get a model that has a better number for a given benchmark, and and another model in our portfolio that's perceived to be not as good does better. And I know for a fact that we don't do any kind of benchmarking and stuff like that, but it's just that benchmarks I know for a fact that this is not intentional in a lot of cases, but what happens is that benchmarks aren't really representative of like actual use cases. That's the biggest problem. So even if like somebody's trying to I don't think any model vendor is trying to intentionally mislead people. People who like run evals, I have no visibility into that. I don't know what they do, but like I hope they don't either. But I think the biggest problem is like if it's GSM 8K or human eval or something like this, it's not really like representative of like most real use cases. So I think like the best benchmark is like the eval you build yourself and evaluate for your use case. And we see that a lot, like where and sometimes like a pure performance-based benchmark might not be good enough either, right? Like for example, you need to balance cost and things like this. And a lot of customers that we work with, they want to like usually like the typical customer user journey or like path for us is they already built something with a prototype, something with an API-based large model, but to run it in production, they need to run it on VPC or they need to run on-prem, or it's for various reasons, so for cost reasons, so security, usually security or regulatory reasons. And when they need to do that, whatever you prototype with the closest analog that we can ship to them with open weights, even if it's a commercial open weights model, it's not going to be cost effective to run on prem. So then we had to kind of like do various things like distillation to like bring it down to like I mean, get the same functionality in a smaller model. So so like a benchmark or an eval is multidimensional. So it's like it's a typical engineering problem where you're trying to balance cost and performance.
I feel like I've seen this before, right? And so back when I was starting on my engineering journey 15 or so years ago, my favorite answer was by a mentor of mine. He was like, "It depends," right? And so when I think of
Yeah,
COVID, right, gaming took a big rise during COVID because everyone was home. People got into gaming. I'm a gamer myself, right? And I remember the frames war, right? FPS, first person shooter games, all about
yeah.
FPS. And you see
What'd you
these
play?
tweets. Warzone. I played Call of Duty.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, like everyone else back in 2020, right? And so everyone was rushing to get, oh, I've got 200 frames, I got 300 frames, right? But then,
Yeah.
okay, are you streaming while you're playing? What system are you on? What GPU are you using, right? And so I just saw these advertisements, they're like, oh, these are the best frames, these are the best settings. And the answer is, it depends. What equipment are you using? What's your, your bandwidth at home, right? Are you wired in, right? There's so many different factors. So when I see these different comparisons, I see this benchmark and I'm just like, okay, is this marketing? Like, how do we really know? There's so many factors to consider. So I think you probably had the best answer I think I've heard because we're not thinking about that, right? We're just so used to consuming on the internet. Well, this says this one's the best, so that must be the best. So I'll go with that.
Pretty much. And the other thing is like if you think about like I think the most successful use case for so-called generative AI is like not even ChatGPT. The OG product was Copilot, right? GitHub Copilot.
Yeah.
And like so if you take that use case into account, and in a lot of ways that's been like the most kind of widely accepted like top use case where like people have like really embraced it. Now if you think about like building a code editor, AI code editor, say like something like Cursor, you want to build your own or whatever. I mean, there are so many to the point that it makes no sense to build your own, but then they're all good in their own way. Let's assume that you want to build your own company's internal code editor, which is a very valid use case. We come across customers like that a lot many times.
Yeah.
So the model that you choose to like do, like basically like the newer version of like, how do I write a function to do this? How do I extract this kind of data from PDFs or whatever? That sort of like conversational stuff that's handled by a model that has pretty good IQ, I would say, like model IQ, like ability to understand a code base, stuff like this. Now, if you want to do tab autocomplete, that model that supports the chat functionality might just be too big for that. So you might need like a fill in the middle model that's like fairly small, or you might and you might need a larger model to do this agentic chat stuff. So even in the same use case, you could use you might need to use a couple of models because you don't want to do tab autocomplete with a giant model, right? Because you're going to pass in like the pretext, the subtext. I mean, like the code before what you're trying to change, code after that. Then the token cost, even if you have it running somewhere else, the cost is going to balloon. So like it becomes like it's like at face value it's like I just use this model, then I use this other model for this other thing, but then actually building this out, it becomes a bit of an engineering problem.
So would this be correct, right? I think of it, right? When I think about leadership, right, I tell people, right, when it comes to low performers, as a leader, right, if I'm fixing a door, I'm doing something around the house and I get the wrong wrench or I get the wrong tool, I don't just throw it away, right? It's on me to kind of pick the right tool and figure that out, right? When it comes to leadership, right, the onus is on the leadership. How am I enabling my teams? Is it correct to say when we're thinking about these models, right, and we're thinking about the use cases, right, which model you use, what approach you take depends on your use case, right? It sounds like you're saying that there's a lot more to think about at a surface level in terms of, okay, well, how am I going to approach this, right? What is my specific use case and how do I go about figuring out, okay, what the best combination is?
For sure. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And also like, you asked the question like at the very beginning, we are like a couple minutes in. So like, I think maybe 10 minutes ago, you asked this question, like how does one start to like wrap the head around it, like in a more functional, I mean, a more useful way. And I kind of gave a rambling answer, but I think the right answer in a situation like this is like for people who are making these decisions to almost like think like product managers and start like tinkering on their own. I mean, you don't need to be like a pro developer or anything like this. You could be like, as long as you're like an intelligent adult or even a kid at this point,
Yeah.
you can like build certain things and just like get a feel for it. Then after that, you can like go from the top down and understand like, oh, what's behind this, what's behind this. Then if you do that over a few weekends and stuff like this, then you have a good sense of like what's going on. Then you can have a more intelligent conversation with a vendor or whoever, so that you don't get like completely screwed by somebody saying like something that's completely made up. Um,
Okay.
so I
No,
think that's
that
like a go ahead.
no, you go.
No, I think that's like a good thing that's feasible now more than ever, because like coding agents are pretty good. I'm not saying that you should vibe code your entire production app, but like when you're tinkering and stuff, it's like as long as you know some basic stuff, like how to write a for loop, how to like use recursion or something like that. Like just how to write a function, like just basic Python. I mean, Python is the closest thing to English, right? It's basically like writing
Yes.
English, and like now you get to write English to create
Yeah.
Python, which is awesome. So I think like now like technical decision makers are in a good enough situation to kind of just prototype on their own and just see like what's out there, like, and you just kind of feel it. And I feel like if they have like technical peers or people in their team or whoever, then they can get pretty far. Then they can have like a proper decision and go to any conversation with a point of view, whether it's with
Yeah.
a vendor or some sort of random consultant or whatever. Then it's going to be a more productive conversation.
No, no. So you said a couple things that I want to double click on, right? And so you mentioned vibe coding, which is a polarizing topic right now.
Yeah.
I think there's value in understanding Python, understanding syntax. I did a vibe coding workshop here in Singapore recently. I
Nice.
thought it was fun, right? And the use case that I thought there for someone like me is that if I've got an idea, the path to get from zero to just a prototype, that's what that's for. I'm not saying it's going to take the job of developers. You still need software engineers and things of that nature, right? But
Yeah.
I'm also launching a segment for this series called "Let's Go Build Some Shit," right? And that's the phase that I'm in now
Yeah.
in terms of just
Yeah,
tinkering
let's
with
go.
things, right? And so you said some words like build, and you said GitHub, right? And so if memory serves, you've got about 105 contributions to GitHub in the past year, right? So you got a large footprint out there, right? So for those that are aspiring to get into AI, they're already in tech and they're like, okay, well, I want to be an AI applied engineer. I want to learn more about machine learning, right? When it comes to, I tell people all the time on our cybersecurity call we host every week, shout out to CSOH.com. Just get your hands dirty. The best way, you can take the certifications and you can read and you can take all the Coursera you want, but at some point you have to get your hands dirty, roll your sleeves up and just go build some shit, right? How do you go about doing that if you're just now starting out and you're like, okay, look, this is where my interest is. How do you approach that? What's your approach? What
Yeah.
advice do you have for aspiring engineers?
So first of all, like my contributions to GitHub have been like dismal this year, because most of my contributions are for internal code bases and like
Yeah.
various things that we ship to customers. But yeah, I used to do more of that before I had to like build a team and stuff like this. But
Yeah.
to answer your question, I think like again, like I think vibe coding is like a great thing in a lot of ways, because it gives like I mentioned, like it gives a way for technical decision makers and think people like product managers to like actually build some prototypes out instead of like just sticking to something like Figma. Like I think it used to be the thing, right? Like you just build some wireframes or whatever with Figma or some other piece of software or Canva, whatever you got. I don't even know if people use Canva for that, but or
Yeah.
Adobe. I'm just like throwing names out there so that I don't want to offend anybody. But whatever your favorite product is, you build some stuff out, and but now you can actually like make things more. You can materialize things, right? Like you can build more real things, and I think that it's a great thing. And I feel like maybe vibe coding is like not the best term for the useful incarnation of that, but I do feel like if I were to do like a side project or like I don't know, like be a solo founder or like a 3-person startup or something, having these tools available is like amazing, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, like for example, if you're doing some, if your novelty is primarily in the back end or in the machine learning algorithms themselves and the infra, then you can focus on that. Then you can build a functional prototype that looks good for like an MVP or something. Then you can actually get a professional front end developer to kind of like maybe like see that and maybe build something more production grade, or maybe that in itself for the kind of thing that you're trying to do could be production grade. So I think like the way to get started is like maybe like start simple, like just like any other kind of programming. But one thing that people well that I used to get around when I was like a lot younger is like I want to like I get into something, then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go from like 0, then I'm gonna get into like a 95, then you get stuck at 10 because you got other stuff, you got homework to do and all these things, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's always good to like motivate yourself by like building something that's higher level, that's functional.
Okay.
Then you have to subject yourself to pain. There's no other way. Like unless you suffer, you won't learn anything. But that's the tricky part, right? Like when it's somebody who's got a good paying job or whatever, and like a happy kids or whatever, who knows, a dog, whatever you got,
Yeah.
like then you don't want to subject yourself to pain. But I feel like my graduate school PI, his name was Jordan. I think he did research on metamaterials, and one thing that was his saying: pain is suffering is necessary for learning. Like you got to have a little bit of pain or a lot of pain. But I think but then pain without any sort of motivation is really hard, right?
Yeah.
Why would you? Like it's just like that's at that point it's just some psychological problem. So you should like kind of find a subdomain or something that you find interesting, or like a different way of looking at things in AI or whatever it is. Then build something that's functional.
Yeah.
Then you start like looking like why is this it kind of works, but if I were to scale this out or if I were to make it production grade, you will see that this is not going to cut it. Then like how do I make that happen? Then you go maybe like either a level deeper, then you realize like, oh, you gotta like start like way lower in the stack, then you like work your way up. So then you experience the pain, then you get to a point where you kind of put many hundreds of hours in, then you understand a lot of things. Because otherwise, like if you do like all these course after course after course after course, it's just like you're just like spinning in circles, and you don't retain anything, and you don't have any motivation. That's kind of what I see in a lot of cases. So that's my two cents for that.
No, man, the athlete in me says that reps and iterations are important, right? Some of the smartest people that I've met have learned through failure, right? And they don't see failure as like, oh my gosh, like it's just a single point and I need to pivot. Failure is just a rep that we just need to get past, right? And we learn something from that, right? So I think that's important, especially in how people learn today. So we're going to get to like sort of a rapid fire session point of this, right? And so it's a weird economy right now, right? Lots of folks are upskilling, making pivot, making transitions. We've got a new cohort entering the working force, trying to figure out what's next, right? Is my job going to be obsolete? Where's my time best spent? Give me one skill that you hire for that doesn't really appear in job ads.
Ooh, it's I think it's like it's two things, like curiosity and kind of like motivation. I don't know if grit is the word for it. Like I think after that Penn professor wrote the book and gave the talk, grit has been like used many times.
Yes,
I think it's Angela Duckworth, right? But I think like maybe I don't know if grit or motivation is the right word for it. Maybe they're two different things. But I think whatever that is, that's like super appealing to like a team like ours, because we're a small company. We are compared to other small companies, we're I guess we're better known, but like we are just trying to like do just impossible things, right? And we just want people who are like super motivated to like who are intrinsically motivated. That's the word, intrinsically motivated to do something that's like great. And it shouldn't be because AI is cool. You have to like drink some of that Kool-Aid yourself, and you actually have to think it's important in some way. I think that's like the most important thing.
My favorite term is urgent curiosity, right?
That's a good combo. Yeah,
that solves a lot. That solves a lot. Is there? I know you're pretty busy these days trying to scale. Is there a book that everyone on your team has read that you think is important these days for people to check out? Or do you have a lot of time to even read these days?
No, I read like some papers and stuff occasionally. Like I see like.
Or it could be your favorite white paper. It could be a white paper you feel like everyone needs to check out.
No, there was like a good paper from ByteDance called Vision. Vision as you give like decode only language models the ability to process vision data using adapters instead of like using vision encoder. I think that was like a few months ago, but there's a lot of papers these days. I think since reinforcement learning is hot again, I think people should read the DeepSeek math paper. I think that if people want to understand like when it comes to white papers, if people want to understand how vision language models work, I think the Pixel 12B paper was pretty good from our team, and there was another survey from CVPR that was about like just a survey on like vision language models.
Okay.
So there's a lot. This the rate of like quality work that's being released is like pretty amazing these days.
Okay,
It's
I'm going
nuts.
to include links in this description for everyone to go
Okay.
check those out. Is there an emoji that describes your current sprint that you're in right now that you can think of?
I don't know. It's just like a ship. You just keep shipping. That's what I think. That's like one of the most frequently used emojis internally at Mistral.
Gotcha. For mine, it's like a duck. Like it seems smooth on the surface, but then I'm just paddling underneath the water. But
Yeah.
I like the ship one. I like the ship one. Okay, and we'll end it with this one, right? And so I want you to think about this one, right? So constantly, what I tell myself, right, when I find myself in moments, whether I'm about to get on stage or I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling anxious about a particular project or a customer, I tell myself that, look, 10 years ago, what you visualized, you've exceeded those expectations, right? And so, and I try to also tell myself that 10 years into the future, you're going to have this shit figured out, right? So that's how I access my sage mode, right? But in the spirit of AI and ChatGPT and prompting, right? You're looking at yourself through the lens of time, maybe 10, 15 years ago. What prompt would you give yourself now? What prompt would you give Avi in the past to help figure out your career and help just kind of go along?
Chill out. Yeah.
Chill out. I like that one.
No, like I'm one of those people who took everything seriously, maybe too seriously at times. Because I don't show it. Like when I talk to you or anyone of my colleagues or teammates or friends or family or whoever I run into, like I don't give that vibe off. But yeah, I think just like take a breath and just like kind of contextualize. I think that would have been like the most. I don't know if contextualize is the right word for it, but like just process the information that's given to you and
Yeah.
just relax and plan. I think that's like probably the most good piece of advice. I don't know. I can just like I'll put all that stuff in a prompt and ask ChatGPT to summarize it, and I'll give it back to myself. I'm sorry,
No, I mean,
not ChatGPT, Lasha. Sorry, we have
there
our
it
own
is.
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's a good one, right? When I think back to, man, when I first started my career way back when I was working in IT, I wanted to conquer the world, right? I had so many things I was trying to accomplish. Then when I discovered technical sales and I was an SE, I was like, man, I got to be a CCIE in a record time. I set the goal to be a CCIE in like 2 years. And I never passed the lab. I got all the way up to the written and I was just, okay, well, this isn't, this is about as far as I want to go. But man, I was hungry, right? And I was urgently curious, right? But I think what I've learned as I've evolved as a father, as a husband, and as a human being is just that I think chill out sums it up perfectly, right? There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of distraction. And it's so easy to kind of give our energy into trying to be successful, trying to figure out that version of success, right? As opposed to just, being in the moment and saying that, okay, look, it'll be okay, right? Now, chill out doesn't mean, okay, well, just coast and don't work hard, right? But I think that was really powerful and simple and profound, right? Because, God, I think there's a lot of us that are really high performers that, man, when we look back in our early 20s and stuff, we're just like, I'm chasing a title, I'm chasing a certain compensation level. And it means the world, right? And you're like, I got so much time and I got to conquer the world. And now I'm just like, okay, do I like the people that I'm around?
For sure. I mean, you should have a general thesis and like have a subnotion of what you want to achieve, but as long as you put the work in, if you kind of like if you're persistent, then the stuff that happens in the world like would go in your favor, right? Unless, of course, you're the one guy working on vacuum tubes when transistors was about to come out. But even then, I think the physics is still useful, right? So, like, I think as long as you work hard and like you have like a general direction that you want to move in, it's not like I'm like like super successful or whatever. But like that's kind of my thought process.
Well, awesome, my friend. We're at the end of our conversation. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I think you're a very cool individual. I also want to give you the floor. I think what you're doing at Mistral is important. Mistral is a very cool company. I'm keeping my eye on everything you guys are doing. So this is your chance to maybe shout out where people can follow you, where you prefer them follow you, and just whatever message you want to send out into the universe.
Yeah, I think I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. But yeah, and I think I might have some talks scheduled, but I don't know when. But yeah, just keep just check out Mistral and the kind of work that we do. We do some good work, and we're one of the I think we're the only genuinely open model provider that there exists in the Western Hemisphere. So check us out.
You are. Awesome. We'll be keeping an eye on you, man. Thank you so much, my friend. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.